Hi, welcome to the Outcome-Centric Selling Academy, to our course on planning to win, and on the first module of that course, where I want to explore some of the key principles behind planning to win. And I want to start by reminding you of something that Neil Rackham, the author of Spin Selling, said. And he concluded, after all his research, that good selling depends on good planning more than any other single factor. In other words, if we fail to plan, we're planning to fail. So there's some differences, though, between effective and ineffective plans, and simply having a plan isn't enough. And here's what I've observed. Ineffective plans tend to be lengthy, they tend to be full of irrelevant detail, they're often more theoretical than actionable. They're often based on untested assumptions. They set very often unrealistic or unachievable goals. They include vague, hard to measure objectives. They're rarely reviewed or updated. They're owned by planners rather than implementers. And honestly, they end up, despite all the effort put into them, failing to influence behavior or to change performance. Whereas the characteristics of effective plans tend to be that they're short and simple, they're actionable, they're evidence based, they're stretching, but they are realistic. They have clear, specific, time bound objectives. They're dynamic, they're adaptable, they're regularly reviewed. It's a collaborative exercise, including all the people who are going to be responsible for implementing the plan, and they end up, as a result, delivering the expected better outcomes. So there's some very, very significant differences. And I want to remind you of the idea that hope must never be your strategy or your basis for planning. You've always got to look for the evidence. Your plans, of course, must be aspirational, but they must never rely on hope or untested assumptions. You've always got to base them on the best possible evidence. And if you're not sure about something, you need to flag it. You need to avoid making significant decisions based on untested assumptions. Now, it's okay, and it's often necessary to begin with a well thought through and well researched hypothesis, but you've always got to seek to verify the assumptions it's based on and be willing to modify your plans accordingly. And it's dangerous, really dangerous, to assume that apparently similar organizations and roles will inevitably think and act in similar ways. You know, if any aspect of any of your current plans are based on untested hope or assumption, you have to flag it. And you have to take concrete steps to eliminate any uncertainty. And after all that, whenever something significant changes, you must take that as a trigger to review and, if necessary, revise your plans. So those are some very basic concepts behind good planning. And when we think about plans that include objectives, I'd suggest to you that every one of those objectives have got to pass the SMART test. Well, what does SMART mean? Well, it's an acronym. S for specific. The objective has got to be unambiguously defined, so there's no scope for misinterpretation. The objective has got to be measurable. The expected outcome and your progress towards it has to be clearly measurable. It's got to be achievable. It's got to be stretching and represent significant improvement whilst at the same time being realistic. It's got to be relevant. That objective's got to be relevant to your overall goals and to your performance in your role. And finally, it's got to be time specific. It's got to have a clearly defined, realistic target date or time frame. And those are the 5 tests that I would suggest any significant objective in any of your plans have got to satisfy. Now, there's a essence to this in terms of planning and learning. And the fundamental principle that underpins this is the PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, and adjust. It's a simple, structured feedback cycle that drives systematic learning and it promotes continuous improvement. So the P stands for plan. You've got to establish your expected outcomes and identify the strategies and tactics that you're going to implement to achieve them. And then do. You've actually got to implement those chosen strategies and tactics. You've got to put them into practice. 3, then you've got to check. You've got to measure your success in whether those strategies and tactics have actually had the desired impact in terms of progressing towards achieving your expected outcomes. And 4th, adjust. It's hard to do a perfect plan up front, so you're almost certainly going to have to adjust your plan in the light of what you've learned and achieved. This simple discipline, the PDCA cycle, is at the foundation of most effective plans. Now, there are 4 types of sales plans, and each one of them contributes to and is influenced by the other types. I'll start with your territory plan, and this should answer the question, how are you planning to maximize the potential of your assigned territory in both the short and the long term? And then we've got account plans, and these account plans should satisfy the question, how are you jointly planning with each key existing and prospective customer in your territory to maximize the potential of the relationship in both the short and the long term? And as we'll see, it's very important that the account plan is something you do jointly with your customer rather than in complete isolation. 3, opportunity plan. And the question that your opportunity plans need to answer is, how do you plan to maximize the potential of each active qualified opportunity? What are you doing to eliminate any risks? And what are you doing to maximize your chances of timely success? And finally, mutual success plans. The mutual success plans seek to answer the question, how are you jointly planning with your customer to ensure that the project is a success and that both they and you fully achieve the outcomes that are expected? So if you think about it, all of these plans are interrelated. They do contribute to each other. And so you've got to think of them in those interrelated terms. Now, there's a different rhythm to those different plans, though. Those different plans require different plan, do, check, act cadences. So territory plans are typically fully revised on an annual basis and benefit from being formally reviewed and adjusted on a quarterly basis. Account plans, well, given that things are likely to change, benefit from being fully revised on a quarterly basis and then formally reviewed and adjusted on a monthly basis. Opportunity plans need to be established when the opportunity is identified, and it's probably best that those plans are formally reviewed and adjusted on a weekly basis. And then mutual success plans. Well, as we've heard, these are developed as a collaborative effort between the vendor and the customer, and they need to be updated whenever a key intermediate outcome is reached or whenever key circumstances on either side change. So different rhythms for different plans. So a quick summary of this foundation module, the core principles of planning to win. Keep your plans simple, keep them actionable. Your territory, your account, your opportunity, and your mutual success plans and your planning process should be no more complicated than is necessary to achieve and establish your key objectives, to set out the key strategies, tactics, and actions you're going to employ, to summarize the evidence that support these decisions, and to show the metrics you're going to use to measure your success. Those are the fundamental building blocks. Plans should be a collaborative exercise. You need to collaborate with your colleagues and your customers in creating, reviewing, and refining your plans. And that collaboration with customers is, of course, particularly important when it comes to account and to mutual success plans. Your plans have always got to be based on evidence, never on hope or assumption. And the assumptions, unverified assumptions must never be allowed to prevail. The actions that arise from your plans must be obvious. They've got to be simply and clearly defined. The ownership of those actions has got to be unambiguous. Every action must have a clear owner who's accepted that responsibility. Every objective has got to be smart. It's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. And as you're developing and implementing your plans, you need to bear in mind and follow the PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, and adjust. Always be learning. And you've got to implement a timetable for reviewing and revising each sort of plan on a regular basis. And yes, if something significant changes in the meantime, of course, you need to review and, if necessary, revise your plan. So, those are some of the foundational principles. And we've come to that time in this module where I want to have you pause and reflect and to ask you, how has this module helped you to think differently? How specifically, based on what you've heard in the last few minutes, are you going to change the way you think about the importance of planning in response to the ideas and concepts that we've shared? And more importantly, as you reflect, what are you going to do differently? What are you now determined to start doing that you haven't been doing? What do you now realize that you have been doing and need to stop doing? And how are you going to make what you were already doing even more effective as a result of applying these principles? And please make those commitments to yourself. Make sure you write them down. Make sure you review them regularly. Make sure you hold yourself accountable to them, and make sure you adjust them in the light of experience. It's only by doing that that those goals are, you stand the maximum chance of achieving those goals. So there you have it. We've established the foundations of good planning. I hope you found the principles relevant to what you're trying to do into developing your own territory, your accounts, and your opportunities, and that you'll want to put the principles into practice. And we'll be exploring each of them in more detail in subsequent modules. Now, our next module is going to explore territory planning in more detail. And I hope you'll want to join me online for that module in the very near future.